Around the world there are numerous regions and areas of other countries that are vying for independence. While for many, these movements can be incredibly tiny and unpopular, such as the independence movement in Bornholm, a faraway Danish island, there are many other regions of the world where practically everyone in that region wanted independence. Think of South Sudan, successfully gaining independence from the northern part of Sudan in 2011. Over 98% of South Sudanese voted for independence. In this video, I shall focus on Europe and cover 5 regions of Europe that have separatist movements. Obviously, there are way more separatist movements in Europe, so I plan on doing maybe another video with yet another 5 regions of Europe or another continent of the world. But for now, I hope you find this video informative and interesting. My first choice for this video lies on the Iberian Peninsula and the country of Spain, the region of Catalonia. Catalonia is an autonomous region of Spain, located in the far northeast of the country with a long coastline along the Mediterranean Ocean, and being the only part of Spain that borders 2 countries, France and Andorra, along the Pyrenees Mountains. Catalonia is an incredibly important part of Spain. Although Catalonia land-wise is just over 6% of what Spain is, Catalonia is much richer than most other regions of Spain by GDP per person. Furthermore, Catalonia represents just over 16% of Spain's population. This means that Catalonia plays a much greater role in Spain's economy than its size would suggest. In terms of its history, it did actually exist as a country centuries ago, known as the Principality of Catalonia, but centuries later it was conquered by Spain and absorbed into the country. Then in 1936, during the Spanish Civil War, the region became an anarchist stronghold. But by 1939, General Francisco Franco won the Civil War, imposing a dictatorship where he then banned the Catalan language and dissolved the Catalan parliament. There was to be no autonomy for Catalonia in his Spain. However, after his death in late 1975, Spain transitioned to a democracy, and with it the region gained self-governance yet again. Following growing calls in October of 2017, the Catalan regional government held a referendum on whether or not it should secede and become an independent country. However, the Spanish Constitutional Court declared the referendum illegal. Despite this, the Catalan government decided to go ahead anyway, and just over 92% of Catalans voted for independence. While this does seem like the vast majority of Catalans wanted independence, it's important to note that this was just under 45% of Catalans voting, as many in the region saw it as illegal as it never gained approval from the central Spanish government in Madrid. From there, Catalonia declared independence, resulting in Spain suspending its autonomy and imposing direct rule on Catalonia. Afterwards, Catalan leaders were rounded up and arrested. Today, many Catalans still want independence, but Spain continuously refuses to allow this to happen. My second choice is located on the North Atlantic Ocean, the Faroe Islands. At over 600 miles away from Denmark, most Faroe Islanders don't identify as Danes, but rather as Faroese. Made up of just 18 different islands, of which 17 are inhabited, the Faroe Islands have their own language, culture and traditions separate from Denmark. Just under 50,000 people call the islands home. When it comes to its history, the Faroe Islands were first said to be settled by Irish monks around 600 to 700 AD. From there, Vikings from Denmark and Norway invaded and drove them out. Up until 1814, the Faroe Islands would routinely switch between Norway and Denmark's rule, but by then it was a full part of Denmark, as the country abolished its parliament 2 years later in 1816. The Faroe Islands were to have no self-governance. A few decades later, however, Denmark would gradually grant more and more self-governance to the islands, but it wouldn't be up until 1940, when Europe was in a world war, that many Faroese would get what they wanted. Just before this, in 1938, the Faroese language was allowed, and 2 years later, after Denmark was invaded by Nazi Germany, then for a few days, the Faroe Islands were a de facto independent country. However, officially, in order to protect it from Germany, Britain then invaded and occupied the islands a few days later. In exchange, they would not interfere with Faroese affairs. Afterwards, a year after Denmark got back the islands and the British left, the Faroe Islands then held an independence referendum from where the independent side would narrowly win just over 50%. Despite this, the Danish government called for new elections, and in the parliamentary elections that year, the pro-union parties won, causing Denmark to eventually grant the islands full home rule in 1948. This was expanded later on. But still today, the islands still are a part of Denmark, just highly autonomous. Despite this, there is a sizable number of Faroese who still want full independence. My third choice for this video is located just over 200 miles away from the Faroe Islands, Scotland. With over 5 million people living within Scotland, and being the second largest constituent country within the UK, Scotland plays a major role in the modern UK. Located in the far north of the UK and the British Isles, sharing a border just with England, despite few people knowing about it, Scotland interestingly does have its own language, Scottish Gaelic. However, this is a dying language spoken by only just a few thousand and based mainly in the northern rural Scottish Isles. Now, Scotland has a long and rich history. Ever since the Roman times, the Celtic descendants of Scotland continuously fought with their English neighbours to the south, eventually forming the Kingdom of Scotland around the mid-9th century. Then in 1707, Scotland would eventually unite with England and Wales in its own union to form the Kingdom of Great Britain. From there, this would be the arrangement up until the 1990s, when Scotland would be granted its own parliament and granted some powers. In 2014, an independence referendum resulted in a small majority of Scots voting to stay a part of the UK. However, after the overall UK voted to leave the EU, most Scots voted to stay, causing many Scots to want another independence referendum to at least settle the issue for the coming decades. The British government continues to refuse this, pointing to the 2014 referendum as the definite vote that Scots want to stay as a part of the UK. Although they have expressed willingness to possibly do another referendum, the British government suggested that this should be around 2050, decades into the future. My fourth pick for the video may surprise you, and although the call nowadays for independence is much quieter and vastly less popular than before historically, this independence movement is still mildly influential in the region of this country. What am I talking about? Well, Bavaria. This German state is the largest in Germany, located in the far southeast of the country. Bavaria is often known for its German stereotypes. In fact, the beer garden comes from this part of Germany, along with Oktoberfest. Most Bavarians also are not Protestant like the rest of Germany, instead they are Catholic. This connects them closer to neighbouring Catholic Austria. Bavaria is also very different in climate as well, as Bavaria is a lot more higher in terms of elevation than the rest of Germany. It's very well known for its mountains. Most Bavarians are more traditional and conservative in politics as well compared to the more liberal/left-wing rest of Germany. When it comes to history, there have been many different kingdoms of Bavaria, dating back to the 6th century. From there, it would eventually be absorbed into the Holy Roman Empire, where it became incredibly wealthy, and most of the time the most dominant state compared to the other tiny German states of back then. From there, Bavaria would become a kingdom again after the empire collapsed centuries later. However, just a few decades after this, Bavaria would join the rest of Germany in 1871. But just after World War II, there were a few attempts to try to bring back the country, including in the form of a Soviet Republic in 1919. Calls reached their peak for an independent Bavaria just after World War II, when the rising Bavaria Party reached its peak, winning just over 1/5 of the votes in the German Parliament in 1949. From there, the party and the overall call for independence began to rapidly decline by the mid-1960s, and today the party has just over a few thousand members. However, in 2016, a referendum which was more widely wanted by many Bavarians was shut down by the German government, as the country's constitution does not allow any state to secede from the country, so it's quite unlikely we'll see an independent Bavaria in the future, or even be able to see if most Bavarians truly want independence. My final pick for this video is Transnistria. This is the only separatist region on this list that acts as a fully independent country. It isn't autonomous, instead it is fully independent. However, the parent country, Moldova, refuses to recognise it. In fact, even its most enthusiastic supporter, Russia, doesn't even recognise the country. Nobody does except other partially or completely unrecognised countries. Located in the far eastern strip of the country of Moldova, this tiny sliver of land has survived for decades despite Moldova claiming it. With a population of just over 400,000 people, Transnistria is largely forgotten among independence movements/de facto states. Speaking mostly Russian and straying further and further away from Moldova, an aspiring candidate to potentially join the European Union, Transnistria is a much more Eastern-oriented de facto country. Sharing a long border with neighbouring Ukraine and the rest of Moldova, Transnistria has a very long history, but to explain briefly, hundreds of years ago the territory used to be a Romanian principality, as an Ottoman vassal state. Eventually, the eastern part was given to Russia, but by 1918, Moldova joined neighbouring Romania along with Transnistria. From there, during World War II, the area was taken back before being recaptured again during World War II by Romania and then ceded back to the Soviet Union at the end of World War II. From there, Moldova would declare independence from the Soviet Union in 1991, from where in early 1992, newly independent Moldova would eventually try to take the area back by force. However, the Russian troops, along with a few Transnistrians, stopped them, from where this area of land still continues to act as a country, although nobody recognises it. If Russia didn't intervene, it'd most likely just be another region of Moldova. I hope you found this video interesting. I'm still experimenting when it comes to the topics I do, and thought just like my Russia's conflicts with the rest of the world video, I'd branch out and do a variety of different topics, rather than just cover a single issue like most of my videos. Please like the video and subscribe with notifications on by pressing the bell if you haven't already, and as always, thanks for watching.